morning, everyone. I'm joined here today by Calgary-Buffalo MLA and Alberta NDP Municipal Affairs critic Joe Ceci, and also our former finance minister who is in charge of our pensions. We're gathered today on the traditional territory of the signatories of Treaty 7, and I also acknowledge the Métis people who share a very deep connection with this land. Albertans work hard to build this province, and they do so knowing that when they retire, they're entitled to the Social Security benefits that reflect their contributions to this province and to this country, like all Canadians. And one of those benefits is their Canada Pension Plan. An important part of our retirement security, one that should never be taken lightly. Except this UCP government continues to pursue an irresponsible and costly plan to pull Albertans out of their Canada Pension Plan without any consultation, jeopardizing the financial security of 700,000 seniors in this province and hurting the stability and viability of every single Canadian's pension. This is a reckless political maneuver that gambles Albertans' retirement savings like they're poker chips in some game with Ottawa, and it's wrong. The idea of pulling out of CPP was recommended by the Fair Deal panel, despite that same panel also reporting that the majority of Albertans they spoke with opposed it. In 2019, the provincial government's own internal analysis showed that there would be higher administrative costs for an Alberta pension plan. And compared to the CPP, the Alberta plan would have a smaller contribution base to absorb risk, leading to more volatile contribution amounts by all Albertans. In other words, more instability and more chaos. One of Canada's leading pension experts says that Alberta's suggestion to pull out of CPP is fraught with financial, demographic, and political risks and would cost $260 million a year just to administer. Finally, when you look at the performance of CPP versus AIMCO, CPP had a 3% higher return over the last decade. And most importantly, Albertans just don't want this. In a poll done in November by the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, 54% of business owners, in fact, thought that pulling out of CPP would put them at a disadvantage, while only 35% felt that it might be beneficial. Yet with all of this, Danielle Smith keeps pushing ahead with it. She sent her finance minister to bring back recommendations for pulling out of CPP and starting an Alberta plan. She also said her government is writing a report about pulling Alberta out of CPP. In December, 2 months ago, she said her government had, quote, found new data, and Treasury Board and finance officials are including this so-called new evidence in their report. In early January, she said the report would be out in a few weeks. In other words, it should be out now, but it isn't. All we know is Danielle Smith and Travis Taves are continuing to work behind closed doors on a secret scheme that will risk Albertans' retirement savings and security despite clear evidence that this is a bad idea. Smith and Taves, therefore, must release this report immediately, not after the election, but right now. Let Albertans judge for themselves if this is another rigged report created by this UCP to try and justify a decision that the UCP has already made. And moreover, let Albertans know whether this UCP is fundamentally still focused on jeopardizing their pensions, and let Albertans know that before the election. Fact of the matter is that there's one more important reason why we must choose a Canada Pension Plan instead of a UCP pension plan. The CPP is stable because it is kept safe from the short-term interests of individual politicians. Changing the contributions or the benefits requires a broad consensus across the country. Pensions, therefore, have to be managed carefully and professionally and without political interference. But if you pay into an Alberta pension plan, what it pays out would ultimately be, by legislation, highly vulnerable to the whims of whoever the premier is. And in particular, right now, under the UCP, a premier who has already proven herself to be deeply unpredictable and untrustworthy. The UCP has already demonstrated how casually they are willing to play with Albertans' pensions. On top of this, Albertans don't trust Danielle Smith with their pension savings. You know, Albertans are entrepreneurial and they're hardworking. They want to know that the hard-earned money that they put aside will be there for them when they need it. Now, we're just a couple months away from an election, and Albertans deserve to know that their retirement is secure. So I'm here today as well to make another commitment that will be found clearly written in the Alberta NDP election platform this spring. An Alberta NDP government will not risk your retirement as part of some incompetent political game with Ottawa. We will keep our hands off your CPP. We care about your retirement. We care about your financial security. And while Danielle Smith and the UCP are willing to gamble with Albertans' retirement security and create more instability, more chaos, and more costs for Albertans, we will put an end to all of this talk about an Alberta pension plan once and for all. Our position is clear. And now Danielle Smith needs to tell Albertans exactly what she plans to do with their pension. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I'll do a quick check for questions in person. And we'll go to questions on the phone. Just a reminder to press star 9 if you're joining us on the phone, raise hand function if you're joining us via Zoom. If you can say your name and your outlet, we'll go to our first caller.
This is part of the this pension thing is driven by this high stakes game between the Smith government and Ottawa. The province, of course, is saying, no, we're just looking for, there might be a better bang for your buck here if we run the Alberta pension plan, suggesting it's not politics. What do you mean when you say the Ottawa, raising the stakes with Ottawa thing?
I think that all along this has been about Alberta trying to separate itself from Ottawa. It has this idea, as unwise and ill-considered and risky as it is for Albertans, was first generated by groups of people who were talking about a whole range of options to sort of quasi-separate and grow the distance between Alberta and Ottawa. So this has long been part of that group of strategies. But we also know that for as long as it's been considered, independent experts have outlined very clearly why it is a risky plan for seniors in the province of Alberta.
Any follow-up, Dean?
Yeah, I talked to Travis Tage last week. He mentioned that asked about the report. He said, well, it's still coming. But Dave said, he characterized it as it's just gonna lay out the facts for and against, just kind of address the playing field. And of course, the premier said, no matter what happens, the Albertans will have a say in whether we proceed with this. Does that give you any comfort?
It absolutely doesn't. We have sources that suggest that the report, first of all, was driven to emphasize the so-called good points of such an initiative, even though there are multiple independent analyses which already say it shouldn't be done. And we have sources that suggest that the report is not going out because they don't want to spook Albertans, who they do understand are vehemently opposed to this initiative. So we are very concerned that this UCP government is sitting on a self-interested report that they are hiding from Albertans because they don't want this to be an election issue, but they still plan to go ahead with it should they get elected. And this is a critical point. Albertans have made their views on this matter very, very clear. And if this UCP government is continuing to toy with this risky gamble to undermine the security of Albertans' pensions, then they have an obligation to come clean on that well before the election. And so that's why we know there's a report there, and we know that these guys are sitting on it, and we are saying that they need to be very clear with Albertans about what their plans are.
We'll go to our next caller.
Hi there, it's Catherine Bukowski, Alberta Today. So I received a response from the Premier's office who says, after Albertans and the government have reviewed the final report, discussed it, and it's clear, and if it is clear Albertans want a referendum on this issue, the government will provide an opportunity and let Albertans decide the matter. I'm wondering what would be wrong with allowing this to go to a referendum as opposed to letting it sit as part of the general election question?
Well, first of all, I think what I heard you read was if it is clear that Albertans want to say on it. So it doesn't even sound like they are guaranteeing the referendum. But moreover, I am very concerned that we would be in a position where a government which is clearly interested in taking over the pensions of Alberta seniors so that they can play a whole bunch of games with it would be running a referendum. This government has done absolutely nothing to earn the trust of Albertans that they are capable of running a fair, factual, objective referendum on anything. And so I would absolutely, again, repeat that what they need to do is put this in front of Albertans before the election. And the very fact that they are scared to do it underlines the fact that they know our Albertans are on it, and they don't want that to turn into a situation that would undermine their election chances. You know, if you believe in what you're saying, then put it to the people in a general election.
Can you follow up, Catherine?
Yeah, and the statement from the Premier's office also said, well, the initial analysis looked favorable. The Office of the Chief Actuary of Canada has some updated figures, as you've mentioned off the top. Is it possible that, in fact, this data from the Chief Actuary of Canada will actually show that it's not a good idea? Is that a possibility, do you think?
Listen, the government of Alberta is absolutely committed under Danielle Smith's leadership to moving forward on a grabbing hold of Albertans' retirement security in terms of the Canada Pension Plan. And depending on the parameters around the report that you ask folks to write for you, you can, ensure that there are certain outcomes. But we've seen independent analysts say over and over again that it is a bad idea. And no actuarial report is going to change the fact that having a broad range of decision makers ensure the stability of the plan is more reliable for Albertans than having the UCP cabinet have the ability to make decisions around the plan. So that will not likely be something that any actuarial will weigh into. And then there's a whole range of other issues that you can pick and choose in terms of whether it's a good idea. But the final thing as well is that Albertans have already said over and over and over again that they don't want this. So this government needs to stop.
Do one more pass for questions. Star 9 if you're joining us on the phone. Raise hand function if you're joining us via Zoom. Seeing none, that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you.